Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining me on the podcast today is Rasheeda Gray of Gray Space Interiors out of the Philadelphia area. And Rasheeda started her business about 7 years ago as a part-time opportunity, and then it has blown up into a full-time career. Rasheeda is going to share on the podcast today a little bit about that journey, what it has been like in growing and developing a team, and then having an opportunity to rebuild when the team left. And she's also going to share the lessons learned as she has embraced the creative and the business side of her life. So I think there is a lot to learn, and I hope you join us. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Rasheeda, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Michele. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to chat with you today. All things business and growing a team and making switches from, a corporate environment, working for other people to working for yourself. And I know you have a lot of insights to share. And so this is going to be, I think, a really exciting, encouraging, and real conversation. So thanks for being willing to have it with me.
I'm so excited. Thank you.
Okay, so Rasheeda, I would love to just begin by setting the stage for the listeners. Tell us a little bit about your education and where you worked and what you did prior to starting your interiors business.
Okay, so where do I begin? I have a background in marketing and international business. I graduated with that degree almost 20 years ago now, and I thought that was sort of my life's path. I really always knew that I've been a creative. And so marketing was the closest thing to creative that sort of was a sure set career path for me. And so I did marketing with insurance companies mostly for 15 years. I worked for companies like Chubb and State Farm. And my last position was assistant vice president of marketing and communications for Chubb Insurance. And so in that journey, I sort of went on the soul searching, sort of personal development journey within that, and discovered that even with career success and promotions and sort of rising through the ranks really quickly in corporate, there was still this untapped desire or purpose that was there. And after kind of doing some soul searching, after talking with friends and family, I kind of said, what would I want to do if I didn't get paid for it? And so Interior design was always there. I didn't realize that it could be a career, but it's always been a part of my life and who I am. 7 years ago, I started Gray Space Interiors, and here we are today.
It's interesting. I, have a business degree and worked in business for years, and I always knew I did creative things on the side. I had multiple small businesses. I'm not talking formal businesses, but I had an entrepreneurial spirit from a very young age. It still just gives me a laugh when I think about I was in the 7th and 8th grade and I had a hair braiding business. Did you know that?
I love that.
That just cracks me up. And the high school girls would come to my hair to get their hair French braided on Friday and Saturday nights before they went out on their dates. And I'd make like $5 to French braid their hair. That just still makes me laugh that my mom even let me bring people over to French braid their hair, but I did. Anyway, I always had that same kind of just creative outlet need and entrepreneurial spirit. Let's do things, not always to make money at it. I mean, I did charge money for most things I did, but that's because people were willing to. What they would say to me is, I'll pay you for that. to your point, I didn't always know that I could be paid for some of those things, but people would start offering. Well, it only took one person to offer for me to realize that I could charge for it.
Yeah.
And I even remember after starting my window treatment company and doing all of those things, doing it in such a way that I did it part-time, and then it grew into full-time, and it grew into something else. And even now that I've had those businesses and I've closed that part of what I do to focus on the coaching and the education and the consulting and matric solutions and all those things, I still have that need for a creative outlet. And so I've tried to turn it, like I've taken some painting classes, like watercolors and things like that, just trying to find other outlets to express this creative drive that I have inside of me. I think some of us are just, I think we all have it. I think it shows up in different ways. For some people, that creativity might show up in a math calculation. For somebody else, it may show up in, I decided to write a book or write a poem. And, for somebody else, it might be in building relationships a different way. So I think we all have some creativity within us that's expressed differently. But I know what you are describing with that need to, that one thing can't fill. You know what I think is cool too is I of course, you and I've coached together for over a year now. But I think what's interesting is watching how your education in marketing has really also influenced the way that you show up in design. And I think what's so cool about that, especially if we were to stand back and look at for those of us that have a belief system that God has a plan for our lives, you can see that you're not wasting, even by shifting directions. It's not like you're wasting that marketing degree. We're now using the marketing degree in a different way. I'm not wasting my business degree. Even when I did financials and all that at the beginning and took a hiatus to build, it was with an idea of financials in the background that showed back up later. So just watching, when you get further along in your life, you can see like the patterns and how they're interwoven. To be able to use that.
It's so interesting. A couple things that you said that sparked something for me. Entrepreneurship, that was not on my radar at all. I never considered myself an entrepreneur. Now in hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a natural thing for me. But when I was younger, my sister braided hair for others in the neighborhood. I did not do that. And it was just about wanting to, you get to an age, maybe it's like early 30s, and I was like, what's my purpose in life? And so it was sort of soul searching to figure out what that is. And then, I sort of experimented. I posted on Facebook a before and after of my own personal home. And it was like the support and encouragement from friends and family that kind of propelled me to the next level. I was like, okay, this thing that I love, interior design, that's sort of been there all along, could be a real career. And I don't know about you, Michele, but I didn't become exposed to interior design being a career growing up.
Never.
I didn't know any interior designers. HGTV wasn't a thing until later in life for me. And so if you don't have the awareness, it's not something that sort of becomes natural as a career. So, perhaps if I would have known, maybe the career path would have been an undergrad instead of marketing and interior design. Mm-hmm. But to your point, everything happens for a reason. And so I think my marketing degree, my business sense, and I have an MBA as well, those sort of experiences and education have sort of prepared me for where I am today. And I also think it's a competitive advantage. It's something that I sort of lean into when I'm talking with clients. I sort of share that journey because I think that's what makes Grayspace or myself unique in that way, that we have those sort of background experiences in business, things like that. So to your point, everything happens for a reason. And it's almost like, okay, I went in this path for some sort of specific reason, and I need to understand that and then lean into that and not shy away from it.
I think it's interesting too, as we talk through this, we all have multiple needs to be well-rounded humans, right? I have a need to think very logically and very mechanically sometimes. And then other times I have a need to think and feel more fluid and more creative. And And it's kind of that form versus function, right?
Yeah.
Logic versus emotion. I think we all have bits and pieces in that. So therefore, when we think about our life's journey, there was a part of Rasheeda that was fed and nurtured and grown through the marketing and through the MBA program and through the things that you did. And then there's a part of Rasheeda that has grown and been nurtured on the more creative side with interior design. And recognizing, this is what I just, if nobody hears anything else, this is what I want them to hear today, is that we're all on this journey, this life journey. And where we start doesn't have to be where we end. As a matter of fact, I hope that it's not, unless it is so perfect when we start. But we have the ability to move through it and to try different things. We want that for our kids. We want our kids to try different things and find what feels good. I think it's also important to look at, and I know I have this conversation with people a lot, there's a big difference from doing something as a hobby or as an enjoyment and then turning it into a business. And that's where I want to talk about kind of that journey for you. So you worked in corporate, and then about 7 years ago, you started Gray Space. You started it on the side, part-time, as a side hustle. Let me see if I like it and how this is going to work out. In other words, I'm not going to just be like, oh, I think I like that, let's quit everything and jump. You kind of overlapped it for a bit, which most of us do, and kind of stuck your toes in the water, maybe up to your knees and hips before you decided to go all the way. Tell me a little bit about what that was like, starting it as a secondary job or a side hustle.
Well, so it was sort of like, I believe in the power of speaking life through the tongue, and, saying things out loud and manifesting things. And so when I was thinking about becoming or looking into interior design, I sort of shared it with friends and family. I did a vision board, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to take a class. So I took a course at Temple University, and I said, liking what you see on TV is one thing, understanding the principles and respecting the discipline of interior design and studying it is totally different. And so in the midst of taking that course is when I got my first client. And that client came from the friends and family that I shared this desire with. So that person was looking for an amateur designer, and I was as amateur as they get 7 years ago. So I took on that first project, charged very minimal because I wanted the grace in the room to learn and grow. And it was one room, and it went well. And then the word spread, and the next client came, and the next client came. And so 3 years in, I was sort of balancing, and I had young children at the time. So it was motherhood and working in corporate, plus and then a very high level job, and then building a business. And so it came to a point where I had to make a decision that if I wanted to grow Gray Space and take it to the next level, am I enjoying it? Is this something I can see myself sort of building a career out of? Then I had to decide if I would continue on or sort of just do it on the side as a hobby. It was, we were growing. I had team members at the time, and I was still working a corporate career. I had like television appearances, and all these things were happening. So it sort of came to a point where I knew I wasn't being a good employee, and I had to decide if I was going to keep going or kind of stay on the horse. So I did some analysis and started to prepare for that transition. Part one was, if I were to do this full time, could I replace my corporate salary? Again, I was children, mortgages, all those great things. And so I had to be responsible with my family and say I needed to have a savings. I needed to have a plan. My husband is also an entrepreneur. So that was a huge help in the process because he sort of understood the journey and was supportive from day one. But we certainly came up with a savings plan and a plan to grow the business. And because I already had team members, because my corporate salary took care of me personally, so whatever I made at Gray Space during that time could go back into the business. That transition was a little easier, but personally, I wanted to prepare financially and with my family. And I also, Michele, I hired a business coach at that time too. So you and I have been coaching together for a year, but 5 years ago or so, right before making the switch to full-time entrepreneurship, I wanted a coach that could help me with like mindset shift, visibility in the design industry. And so I worked with a coach who sort of helped with those things. And it was mindset of working for someone else versus working for yourself. It was also the mindset around, you know, what's the word? Imposter syndrome, if you will.
Sure.
You know, you kind of go from like being an expert in marketing to starting an entirely new career that you're sort of learning and growing by each and every day. So having the mindset of, you know, I am excellent in any field that I'm in. And if, as long as I apply sort of ground principles of work hard, be ethical, learn as much as you can, be a student always, those kinds of things, then I'll be successful in what I'm pursuing. So that business coach was a huge part of the transition as well, and just preparation for that.
That's amazing. One of the things that prompts me to think about when you made the comment about I wasn't necessarily a good employee anymore, didn't mean you didn't do your job, but what it meant to me is we have a limited amount of energy.
Yeah.
And when you are thinking about I used to call it like your juice box. Like if you've ever had a kid that had a juice box, you put that little skinny straw in there and they start slurping on it and you can watch the juice box kind of like collapse on itself. That's what happens in our lives, right? We are handing out straws to people like candy and they're sucking our energy. They're taking all the juice out of our juice box. And I used to talk to my clients a lot about who's got a straw in your juice box. And number one, do you want to share your drink with them? Like some people, I don't want your backwash in my juice box. Get out of my juice box, right? But it's thinking about we have limited energy. I still think about that today in my business. For example, first and foremost, I'm thinking, what is the energy that I need to be a mom or a wife or a friend or a daughter, you know, just to have, what does it take just to be?
Yeah.
Then I think, what does it take to serve others in the capacity, whether it's corporate or for myself and my business? What does it take to serve in my business, but to be the owner of my business? Two different things. Yeah. Because when you start a business like this, and this is a piece I know I missed it, and I have seen most people miss it. Mm-hmm. We are not only going in to own the company, but then we're also the main employee of the company. Yeah. And that main employee has to work 40 hours, but then the business owner has to work too.
That's right.
Right. Which is why we also have, this is what you can make as a salary and this is profit. Two different things because they're paying us for two different jobs. Yep. And I think we miss that. So in other words, the job's never always done and tied up in a pretty bow with nothing outstanding when you own the company.
That's right.
And when you're corporate, it's a little bit more, it can be a little bit more of a split. And I know that when I looked to start mine and then to grow mine at different levels, I kept thinking about where's the best place to put my energy for now, looking at it seasonally, right? Like you mentioned young children, mine were toddlers when I started. And even now, Rasheeda, same with you. And I know you and I have talked about this, thinking about how do I put energy towards growing and maintaining a team, leading that team? Where do I put energy and what is it going to take to serve my clients? What is the best way for me to make the most money, but also serve the best?
Right.
With a client, because there are some clients that can suck us dry and there are some projects that can suck us dry, even if the clients are adorable. And so it's finding that balance between all of it. And when we're first starting our companies like you were and like I have been, you don't really know what's going to energize you and what's going to suck you dry. I think there are times that we think this is going to be exciting and energizing, and it literally is almost the death of us. Yeah. And I know that I have been on the side. There was something that came into, you know, my opportunity list, and I looked at it and I thought, I don't really know, but I'll give it a shot. And then I thought, darn, I love that. I would have had no idea if I hadn't taken a chance. So when you started, I can see you, right? It's true. I can see, like, I'm curious for you. Also, I love that you got a coach at the beginning to work on mindset, because everything that happens in our lives and in our business starts between our ears. It starts with what we think and what we believe. That's why I'm such a fan of the book Atomic Habits, because he talks about what you believe is actually an outpouring outpouring of who you think you are and what you see. And so if you want to change your activities, you got to change the belief systems behind them. So Atomic Habits, great book. But what I'm curious about for you is when you first started, okay, and you took that first word of mouth and family and friends, and then they tell family and friends until there's some point where you're no longer working with just family and friends. Like at some point, we've done all we can do there, or they're really taking our energy. Love family and friends, but they can sometimes be the worst to work with. Not putting that on your family and friends, just saying it's possible. It's just the truth. Because it's a boundary issue, honestly. It's about boundaries. And expectations. But if we were to go back and look at what you thought when you started and where you are now, what were some misconceptions that you think you had? You didn't know it then, but that you've now, 7 years in, looking back, you can see, oh, I didn't anticipate that. I wasn't expecting that. How can we help the listeners if anybody's looking to do a similar thing? What were some of the things that kind of caught you off guard or didn't show up in the way that you thought they would show up?
There were quite a few, actually. So the first one that comes to mind is this idea of, I love interior design or whatever this creative pursuit is. So I would start a business, which means I get to do it all the time. And that is not the case. And so I always say I spend probably 20% of my time actually designing, and then the other 80% running the business. Now, thankfully for me, I love business and especially the marketing side of things. And so it wasn't a deal breaker for me, but if you don't have a business to run, there aren't any projects to design. And it's everything from, in the beginning, doing a lot of the administrative work, reconciling budgets, contacting and emailing clients, working with contractors, placing orders, all those things. Now I have a team that helps with a lot of that part of the business. But even now, it's as you grow and sort of reach for the next level, it's strategic planning, it's professional development, it's being the business developer, the salesperson, and going out and getting the business. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And that is not what I expected when I started this business.
Let me stop you right there. Hold that thought. What's been interesting is I would say that most people think when they come in, that's what they're going to get to do. They're going to get to do the primary activity of the business. That's why in the book E-Myth, where they talk about, isn't it? I love that book. I'm such a great, baker. I bake these wonderful pies. I'll open a bakery. And then they realize they're not the ones baking the pies anymore. They're the ones keeping the business going and checking the inventory and making sure everything's running and then hiring and staffing. And they're like, wait a minute, but I really love making pies, but that's not what you get to do. And I think it is shocking.
I think a goal is to get to a place where things are running well enough where you can sort of figure out where you would like to operate, like your zone of genius, but it's still not the same capacity. You're not going to be the technician and doing most of the work. You're going to be sort of overseeing or being the editor of the design, that kind of thing. So,
that's right. And honestly, even then, when you build a team, understanding, I talked to a friend of mine, and he works at a very high level for an extremely large company in the industry. And his comment was, I asked him, I'm like, hey, so what's been shocking to you about your new roles when he took over as CEO of the company? He said, I was shocked that 75% of my time has been spent on leadership and team development, HR type things. As the CEO, I would not have thought that 75% of my time was on building the team that reports to me so that they can build the team that reports to them, so that by the time we get down, the people that are doing the work of the company can do the work. And I think that I hear that a lot from, and I know that we can get into that in a minute, but I know that a lot of people that I work with, because the businesses that I primarily really help blow their businesses up are the ones that have done those first few years, and they're like, okay, work is coming, so many things are happening now. How do I move into truly that leadership role in my firm, because I'm overwhelmed with all the too much work, right, and all the things. And that shift of, you have to really love business or start to create an affinity for business and for leadership and coaching your own staff and team development has to be huge, and moving sometimes more into that design oversight. I love the part where we talk about, even in Clockwork, about finding your queen bee role, right? Your zone of genius. What is the thing that you love to do? And I know you and I've even had that conversation now, like, okay, Rasheeda, the business has shifted and you've done everything in the business, but what is it that you love to do that you really want to have a grip on?
Yep.
That you want to own, and then what are the pieces that you want to oversee, and then what is the work that we need to hire for so that you can oversee it, but you get to keep doing the parts that you love to do.
I think entrepreneurship is really humbling in many ways, in many, many, many ways, from financial and all those things. But in terms of like being in your zone of genius, you quickly have to realize and self-evaluate and say, I'm great at this, but I am terrible at this, or I'm not so great at that. And then once you have that sort of awareness, being willing to hand that off to someone
Yes.
that you've hired the right people to do the right job. Another one of my favorite books is Good to Great. And so you gotta make sure that you're putting the right people in the right seats on the bus in order to move forward. So that's been a shift that I've learned along the way. And also just kind of letting go and just trusting that you have the right people in place.
So let's talk about team building, because I mean, here's the deal. We can create ourselves a job where we're the only person working in the company. And just honestly, I've seen some people that were independent designers and they just did one or two projects at a time, and that filled their pipeline and filled their heart and filled their pocketbook, in whatever way they need it. So there's nothing wrong with that, and we're not condemning it. Yeah. But there are multiple ways. I know that I get asked a lot when people come to me, Michele, I don't want to grow and scale. And I'm like, well, we always are looking to grow and scale. It doesn't always mean we've got to hire these huge teams. Sometimes it means outsourcing. Sometimes it means growing the type of project that we're doing. It just means not always necessarily doing a one-room challenge over a one-room challenge over a one-room challenge. Those are great. And if your whole business is built on just doing that and you're happy, keep doing it. No judgment, right? Yep. But most of us are going to get tired of that after a while, and we're going to want to expand our horizons in some way. That's what I'm talking about. And one of the things that I've loved in my coaching, and I think that you've enjoyed it too, is like, even when we have a conversation, I'm not just saying, hey, Rasheeda, here's step 3, step 4. It's, what do you love? What do you do? Where do you want to go? How do you see yourself playing into this? In other words, we're designing around you and around what you're great at, or what you want to be great at, or what you want to be known for, or how you want to show up in the world. And that's the beauty. Evolves, by the way, which always evolves. That's right. But the beauty of that is that means that if everybody's building their business, yes, they're business principles. Yes, they're all those things, just like they're great design principles and scale, purport. We got all those things. But when you step into a space, you're saying, who are the people that live in this home? Like I have feelings, like I can feel the feelings when I say it. I step into that home and you're like, who are these people? How do they live their life? How do they show up in this space? How do they want to visually represent their existence in the place that they have for safety as home? Yeah. That's the big question. Well, my job as a coach is to help you do the same thing in your business, right? Who are you and what do you bring? And how do we visually or mechanically or operationally want to set up this business holistically so that you can represent who you are to the world through the business? Yep. And go ahead. I was going to say something about.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's kind of where you were when you came to me. You had a team that started with you. Your business had changed and evolved. People were starting 2 or 3. Honestly, we see about every 2 to 3 years, a lot of businesses and a lot of people these days they're wanting to try something new or go back to something different or explore their own options. And your team had grown with you for a few years, and they were starting to explore other options and look for other things, as were you. Your business was shifting. So when you came to me, you had a thriving business but it was in a position of needing to be rebuilt and kind of recalibrated for the next place that you wanted to go.
Yeah, I think it's like divine intervention because I think I said to myself I wanted to work with Michele, and I sort of planned months in advance. And I think we talked a few months before I started. And little did I know that the timing would be perfect because I had a huge shift. So I had an entire team of 3 people sort of move on in their careers, and one was with me for 5 years. And so I'm grateful that they had the time with Grayspace and that they're moving on and growing, but it was a shock. It was sort of unexpected, and it was a time of transition. And so to have the guidance of a coach during that time was like priceless. So thank you for that.
Oh, that feels very lonely, doesn't it? When you're there,
my goodness.
because it's so many, even when you're excited for other people's opportunities and the changes, you're still standing there going, "Whoa, the ground beneath me shifting."
Yeah. I mean, you go through all kinds of things like, well, what did I do wrong? What changed? And then in hindsight, you say, okay, I'm grateful this happened. For me, that's kind of what it was, because it allowed me to rebuild the team and the that we now needed to grow to the next level.
Let me say this real quick. Not just rebuild the team, but we rebuilt parts of the business, like even the offerings, right? And I love how you made the comment, in good to great. They talk about having the right butts and the right seats on the same bus in same direction, that whole thing.
I don't think I had that before.
Well, or your direction was shifting and changing.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes what we're starting with, that's why we even talk about an aim with intent. People and processes are, kind of the levers that we look at. The business is shifting and changing. The needs of the home, if you will, are changing. Right. And so sometimes those people don't shift and go with you. It happens, right? But what it does, if we can step back and let the emotion play its way out, it gives us an opportunity for a reset to say, now looking forward, how do I want to restructure, recalibrate, put the pieces back together in a different way? And so there is a beauty, and even if one person leaves, it gives you the ability to take that job description and think about things differently that you can't always do when the person's sitting there doing the work.
So true. That's what it was. I had the right people and they were amazing, and we built an amazing company. But as the needs of the company shifted, it's kind of more challenging to have someone who's been doing the same thing for 5 years sort of change in that way with it. So it just really gave me a chance to reassess what our needs are, and then reassess what I would like to do and what I'm great at in the company, and then fill in the holes or the gaps with the right folks. So one of the exercises that you had us do was create a job description for ourselves, and then creating a job description for the gaps that are within the company. And so by doing that, I was able to say, okay, I am currently doing this, but I'm not great at it. I don't love it. It's a time suck for me. I would be better spending my time here, and then I can fulfill the role to do that. So that was super helpful in that transition.
And doing those job descriptions every couple of years. That's one of the beauties of the strategic plan, is this may be my job description today, but allowing for growth. Like, there's nobody on our team. Well, I won't say nobody. Rarely are people on our team that say, sign me up for a job and let's not change it for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
They're going to be bored. They're going to move on. All these things. They want to grow and change and evolve, right? As humans and with their skill set. And so as owners, being intentional, that's the thing that I know that I stress a lot, is the intention. So when we create the job description, we're intentionally saying, here's what we do, right, as the owner. And then like you said, creating that new job description is going, but this is what I want to intentionally do. Like, this is what I want to do, who I want to be, how I want to show up. And then thinking another year out, and in a year out, if I've grown, I want to be able to do this, because there's a gap every year for something that's got to come off of your plate so that something else can come onto your plate. Right. And I think just even being in the mindset to think that way is freeing.
It's even like that with clients. Over the years, your sort of desired or target client shifts, and you have to force yourself to say no to the projects that won't serve your business well, or you won't be able to serve that client well. And then opening yourself up, even if it's not there yet, to the opportunities that will come because you've made space in that way. So the growth and evolution over the years sometimes is a bit challenging in the midst of it. But in hindsight, it's like, oh, I'm so glad that I took the leap and decided to do this. Or I'm so glad. I mean, pricing has been a constant evolution for me. And so just kind of pushing yourself to take it to the next level. And, you just never know what that may do for the business. So it's all from people to pricing to clients. It's all about taking a moment to assess and then identifying what the needs are and then kind of filling them in as you grow.
And giving yourself the freedom to evolve. I think you've done a really good job with that, at saying, I don't want to stay status quo, and I am growing and I am learning. Just like you said, even with that first job, I didn't take a lot of pay so that I had the grace to grow.
Yeah.
Right? Giving yourself the grace to continue to grow even after 3, 5, 7 years, I think is a huge gift. I'm going to bring up something that I thought was really interesting. And it was kind of a moment that you had at the strategic planning event.
Yeah.
A year or so ago.
Yep.
And we were doing project profitability reports. And we were really, like you said, diving into, we had just started Matrique Solutions. And I was showing you all how to dive into checking out project profitability, setting KPIs and goals for that, creating a budget for a project budget, but also a company budget, and then how to allocate funds and how to monitor that all the time. And you had a real moment of, wow, here's some areas of the company that I could improve upon. Right. Yeah. So that I can do some things differently. There were some that I think you were shocked that you actually made the money and the percentages that you made. It was higher than maybe what your feeling was. And there were others where you were shocked in the opposite direction. You thought you had made more. You thought your margins were higher. But when we actually looked at the empirical data, it was different. And I think that is key for many of us. We are running our businesses sometimes just because we're going so fast, but we're running them at such a gut feeling that when things don't work out or things crumble around us, we all go, whoa, what? Wait, what? Where if we can be a little bit more data driven, right? Kind of that, again, form, function, logic, and emotion. But if we can start to look at the empirical data, then we can start building off of it. And that was your moment of looking at the empirical data and comparing it to the gut feeling and seeing that sometimes you were below or above what you thought, like good and bad, right? In both cases. But what it did was that I think it was a hard moment, but it was a powerful moment because it was the moment that you realized, if I know these numbers and I can put this together this way, I can affect the change in a way that is going to make me be profitable and sustainable for the long term. Do you mind sharing a little bit about kind of that? Because it was like, it was an emotional moment. Yeah. Yeah,
it really was. I think it was almost the moment where I went from building a design company and doing something that I love to becoming CEO.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. I think in that moment, of course, there's always a series of other events, but that was certainly one. It was
the culmination of all of it, I think.
Yeah, because it was at the tail end of coming out of the team transition. And it was the time. It was having the time and the space to physically be away from the office and to take a look at the numbers and understand them in a way that I did not before. And so,
you had a heavy travel year. You had been really busy.
Yeah.
And you just had a lot going on.
I was doing the marketing. I was building the business. I was designing. And when it came to looking at the numbers, I was like, well, I know our revenue number is good. I know we're bringing in money. I know we're growing. And this was, 2020, 2021. And it was last year that we sat down at the conference. And so I'm like, our revenue numbers have grown double and et cetera. And it's great. And then I looked at the profit, and then that's when the aha moment went off. And so I think you have to know your numbers. And that's the one thing that I was sort of like trying to just know the surface and not know all the details. And that's the moment when I was like, okay, you really have to know them and understand what they're telling you. And it was as simple as profit and loss, or a P&L statement isn't the only part of the story. You also need to look at the balance sheet. And that's when I realized, oh, this is where we aren't doing so well. We weren't marking up product as high as we should. And then we were leaving money on the table. And when we did the analysis of how much more we could make, and that also helped to solve the problem of like, why is revenue so great, but I don't feel that way on the back end?
And it wasn't by doing more work. It was by
No,
capturing the value of the work you were already doing.
that's
It
right.
was seeing areas where, it's interesting. In the coaching call that I had yesterday with the group, somebody was making a comment and they were describing something they did as not working, but
Yeah.
it was work. What they meant was it wasn't design specific, but it was still work. And I stopped her and I said, can we re-message that? Because internally, if we're messaging that something doesn't have value, then we won't charge for it, or we'll feel guilty for charging for it, or feel like we shouldn't charge for it. But if we can personally message that there is value in what we're doing, then on the other side, we'll be able to charge for that. And she stopped and she's like, you're right. She was almost diminishing the value of the work because she wasn't directly charging. It was indirectly being charged through a billable rate, but trying to understand which things are overhead and which things do we charge for. And if you do it for free as a marketing expense, well, then that's part of overhead, which means our billable rate goes up. And she wasn't getting all those, like you said, those back end tiny correlations.
Right.
And I was having to explain to her, we got to message that we've got mindset. We have to message this correctly to charge for it correctly to then reap the benefits.
I feel like a lot of designers do that. We feel like design work isn't work, especially early on. Or even, no, I would say throughout our entire careers, because you might say, well, yeah, it took me 20 hours, or it took me 5 hours to find the perfect sofa or the perfect fabric for the sofa. But, it wasn't really work because I was just kind of like, and I'm going to make it 3 hours or whatever it might be. We do that all of the time. And so, yeah, I think mindset is a huge part of it. And I also think knowing what you need to make it make sense. This is no longer a hobby. I feed my family and family of my team members as a result of what we do. And so I need to understand not only what we're bringing in, but then like, what does the profit look like at the end of the day, and what money we're leaving on the table affects everybody that we're working with, even our tradespeople. And we have built sort of what's the word? Like, an ecosystem. Like, we work with tradespeople in our community. And so all of those folks sort of depend on us to make the right financial decisions. And that moment in the conference, looking at not only what the top line is, but what is the bottom line, was a big aha moment for me.
I think the second aha moment, if I could, and if you think this is not the case, you say it, right?
Yeah.
I think the second aha moment was that understanding in your own heart and mind that you are the owner of the firm that makes the change. It, like you mentioned it as it was the move from I've got a business to I'm that CEO mindset. It was because you felt, here's the thing. It wasn't that here's information, now let's make you feel bad about it. Right?
No.
It was here's powerful. Information. It was powerful. Here's information. And now you can use that information to get what you want on the other side. Like you can affect change. That's why, like, my tagline is what you own, you can change. So you had to have that moment. We all have to have that moment. I'm still having that moment of, what do I own in this? Because if I own it, whether it's my thought process, whether it's a a breakdown in an operational structure or a financial understanding, if I own it, then that means I can affect the change of the next thing. It's when I don't look at it, won't take ownership of it, that I can't do anything about it. And that was the moment that I think you saw the pieces, like that culmination, but you saw the power of the culmination, because you had the biggest smile after you kind of took it all in and sat with it and processed it.
It was a huge relief.
It was. It was. I saw that.
I knew something wasn't right, just because I've been in the business world. And so I knew that what I'm seeing on the top end wasn't kind of flowing down to the bottom end. And it was like that moment of uncovering what it was. Yeah. It's a huge relief. Yeah.
Huge relief. So, all right, let me ask you this as we are moving forward in your story. So you have, since over the last 2 years, you have rebuilt a team in a new way.
Yes.
By starting by asking, who is Rasheeda as the queen bee principal role within the firm? What do you want your role to be? And then what do we do in the support roles for the firm? So that you can all serve the clients well. You have made operational changes. I know that we have made some pricing and profitability changes by setting KPIs and putting goals in place and monitoring it, being able to see it visually and metric. That has been a beautiful thing on top of it. But you've done all that hard work. Tell me where Gray Space is now and some of the fun things that you have in front of you.
Now we are focused on working on the right projects. And we're also sort of keeping our eyes open to additional revenue streams. I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, that the market is changing and needs are changing in the market, and the economy is sort of like, we're all kind of just waiting and wondering what's going to happen.
We're a little schizophrenic right now. We don't really know who we are and what we're doing. Yeah.
We are. I mean, I'm in Philadelphia. So at the beginning of the year, it was kind of like uncertain. And we've been seeing an uptick the last few months. But still, in light of knowing what could happen, I've been on a pursuit to diversify our income. And so, in my role as CEO, I force myself to take the time to think about the company in that way. And so on Friday mornings, it's just me and myself in the office, and I'm looking at our performance, and I'm thinking about some of the initiatives that we have going on. And so for us, we're building in the commercial space. We've been mostly a residential design firm. And so we are slowly taking on commercial projects. We just locked in, and I think I brought it up on one of our coaching calls that I had a proposal with a commercial project and needed some guidance on sort of like that proposal process, because that was new for us. But I'm happy to say that we've won that project. So we've started on that one. We're diversifying our income through commercial as well as influencing, which is very interesting. As a designer, especially I think in the social media area, which is an area that I love because of my marketing background,
right.
Influencing is always at the forefront. And so I've learned that you can do both, and that you can do it in a way that doesn't compromise the other. I know a lot of designers may feel slightly different about that, but we're looking to work with partners that we have worked with in our own client projects on the influencing side. So that's been an area of growth for us. And then television as well is just another area that we're exploring. So it's been an exciting time, just opening our eyes beyond just residential and figuring out not only what do I want to do as CEO, but where does the company want to grow, and like what areas seem to be profitable for us to grow in. So that's kind of what's on the horizon. And I have an announcement that was just announced yesterday.
Yeah, what's that?
I am going to be participating in House Beautiful Whole Home Show House, which is going to be in Chicago, Illinois, or Hinsdale, Illinois this fall. So we are working on our next show house, which is exciting.
When is that? Do you know when?
It is going to open to the public in late October, early November.
That's so exciting. You know what I love about the whole idea behind the Profit is a Choice podcast is
Yeah.
that our choices lead us towards or away from profitability.
Yeah.
And profitability is not just numbers, right? Profitability is about, are we doing what we love? Are we having profitable communication, profitable relationships? It's so much more than money. And I love how you have taken that information in, Rasheeda, from not just from me, but from a host of other areas as well. And you have really kind of distilled it down to what does it mean for Rasheeda Gray and for Gray Space Interiors. And then you are looking for what does it mean to be profitable in my community, in my home, in my work, in our processes, and in the lives of others. And so thank you so much for sharing that journey and going through it. It has been a pleasure experiencing some of this with you and seeing your growth. And I'm just really thankful for what you have added, not only to our coaching, but even to the conversation today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michele. It's been a huge blessing to just kind of learn from you and to kind of see the growth looking back. And it's definitely made a huge impact in who I am as a business owner. And I'm excited about our future. So thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I will put all of your notes in the show notes, but tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
Yes, on all platforms where Gray Space Interiors, Gray, like the color, the word space, and interiors with the S.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing with us today, and I look forward to continue watching you blow up in all the best ways.
Thank you, Michele.
Rasheeda, thank you so much for joining. That was such a fun conversation. It really has been a joy and a privilege to watch you take the information and take the education that you have and to have the opportunity to grow something really big and beautiful and amazing. And so thank you for that. I want to encourage all of you to give yourself room to grow, room to let your business expand. And that may show up in a multitude of ways. And so just knowing that, that there are other ways of doing work in business, listen to yourself or listen to your heart if something feels off or like you don't know enough, and reach out for help, because asking for help is one of the first steps in moving into the full business owner that you hopefully want to be. And so we here at Scarlet Thread Consulting and Matreat Solutions have the opportunity to help you do that. And we would love to chat with you about it. You can sign up for a discovery call and make the choice to grow your business, because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.